I'm really nervous as I start to film this video. I've tried starting it about 3 times already and I stopped it each time, and it took me a moment just to realize that I wanted to lead with what was actually alive for me. And what's alive for me in this moment is that I feel nervous, and there's butterflies in my belly, and my chest just kind of feels a little bit tight, and noticing myself just kind of feeling also disconnected from my body a little bit. This video is about money, and what prompted me to record it is that, as some of you know, I spent a fair bit of time in, I think this was in July and August. I set out to do this project of talking to 50 different people in my community about money. And I promised myself, and I also promised them, that after I was done, I would follow up and I would create a video to let them know, just share what I learned about it, share what I took away from it. So this video is that video. And I guess I want to share with you, before I go into that stuff, why I undertook this project. Kind of the most literal reason that I undertook this project of talking to 50 different people about money is because I was challenged to do so by a coach who I have a lot of love and respect for. His name is John Morgan, and we were emailing back and forth, and he had picked up a little bit, just kind of a small thing in my language in the email, and dug a little deeper and got to this place around how I was feeling around money and the amount of money that I had in my life. Um, and he ended up challenging me to go talk to 50 different people about money. What he said in his email, he says, I find it's usually uh, has something to do with the way that people are relating to money, that has to do with how much money they're bringing into their life, or how much challenge or struggle that they're experiencing around money in general. So I started doing it. I made a Facebook post, and I ended up getting a ton of response. And when all was said and done, I had literally exactly 50 conversations that I had had with people, some of whom I have known for years, and some of whom I only know a tiny bit, and some of whom I don't know at all, because I posted this in a couple different Facebook groups, a couple different communities on Facebook. So the deeper reason why I wanted to do this is because money has confounded me, especially over the past couple of years since I've really dug into growing my coaching business, and really really stepping out of my comfort zone, leaving a comfortable situation in the Pacific Northwest where housing was cheap and didn't have to worry about money a whole lot, to living in California and living in Los Angeles, and really really for the first time in my life, fully depending on myself to take care of myself financially. And what started coming up was a lot of fear around money that I had no idea was there for the entire rest of my life. And it was kind of confusing because I've grown up really privileged, just really well supported and loved by my parents, both just emotionally as well as financially. I wouldn't say that I have been spoiled, but privileged definitely. You know, I was paid to go to college, supported entirely all the way through college, had every advantage growing up of being able to play an instrument or play a sport and have all the equipment, and just had tons and tons of opportunities, and have parents who are successful in their business. And so it's interesting being a grown man, being 35 years old, and having such a challenge making money myself. And it's kind of like, ouch. And this is one of the things that I realized through my conversations, is how much pressure I put on myself to make money. And there's a part of me that really wants to be the provider, even if it's just for myself. But I do want to provide for other people. I want to be able to give. Um, I want to be able to support the people that I care about when I feel like it, or when it feels good to me to do that, when I would like to love them in that way, or when they want it and need it or could use it. And yeah, for So realizing that I have put a lot of pressure on myself in the past, um, uh, and underneath of that, what I've been realizing as of late is this kind of deep existential fear that something is really wrong and that I'm gonna die, basically, or it feels like I'm gonna die, and it's a feeling that's kind of so deep and has been the filter for my entire existence for so long. I'm only just starting to see it and realize that it's there. That yeah, it's been really interesting again to notice that underlying terror. Literally, last week in my therapy session, the word terror came out of my mouth, and it's like, holy cow, how did a privileged white male middle class guy who had every apparent um, privilege in the world, how did he end up living in terror? And from that place, from that terror, there's a part of me that sought security in money. And so that's kind of been the underlying energy to all of what I've created is fear of just deep terror, existential terror, feeling like I need money in order to be secure and be safe and be happy. Um, and for some people, that drives them to make a whole bunch of money and never stop and never slow down and never appreciate it. And for me, that's really disconnected me from making very much money, or at least as much money as I would like to make. So that is why I started having these conversations and why I've been doing so much of my uh, inner work around money lately. And to give you another reason why is because I want to be nourished and fed in my life. I was talking to a friend just today about the kind of home that I want to live in. And I want the home that I live in to be one that is beautiful and open and spacious and that just feeds me and that I'm excited to go back to every time. And not a home that I have to settle for something that's cheaper, but one that I get to choose based on what's going to nourish me the deepest. Because I know that when I'm nourished in my heart and in my soul and in my body, then my healing work in the world is going to be so much stronger. And so this is true for the home that I live in. This is true for the food that I eat. This is true for the like the travel that I get to do to go see friends or go to events and invest in my personal development. And there's just all the reasons in the world why I want to be nourished and be freed up around money so that I can have as much as I want come in to support myself, so that I can just really support other people from a place of having my cup full. So, uh, a few of the things that I noticed as I was having these conversations that were interesting to notice. None of these were huge breakthroughs, but they're interesting things to notice. So, thing number one was everybody has money stuff. And it's kind of like, duh. I think all of us get that on some level, but I got that on a deeper level. Talking to somebody who has a friend who inherited $20 million, and she has shame around that. And how many of us are sitting around saying, God, I wish I had $20 million, and yet here's this woman who has it and is in shame about it. All the way to talking to somebody who was dating a guy who was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and has his own unique set of money stuff coming up, like emotions and fears and shames around money. And it was this really interesting kind of palette in between those two extremes of how everybody's got their money stuff. It doesn't matter how much you have, it doesn't matter how much you don't have, it shows up. So that was thing number one that was really interesting for me to notice, and that kind of became clarified through my conversations. Thing number two was I already talked about this, but I'm hard on myself. And one of the thoughts and questions that came out of these conversations is if I knew that it was going to take 10 years for me to get to the place where I was going to be like feel and be financially abundant. I don't even like that word so much. It's just like if I was going to be in flow with money and not be in fear around money and have enough to do the things that I wanted to do. If I knew that that was going to take 10 years until that happened, how would I treat myself until then? How would I how would I feel? Like, what would it mean for me just to come to peace with that fact? And so, you know, in the real world, I don't get to choose how long it's going to take. Um, but I have this deep intuitive sense that the more that I come to peace with where I'm at, the more space that I create for what it is that I want to come in. Um, so yeah, that question of what if I knew it was going to take another year or another 5 years or another 10 years until I got what I want? Would I continue struggling and fighting and kicking and screaming and beating myself up the whole time? Or would I do the work to come to peace with it? Thing number three that I took away from my conversations was a strong correlation between self-worth and amount of money that people were earning or making or creating in their businesses. Um, Talked to people. One of the most powerful, again, kind of dichotomies of this was going to a coaching event and seeing the woman who was running the event on stage coaching somebody live after 10 minutes of coaching, literally saying to the woman, go sign up for a full day with me. Just kind of out of nowhere. She was coaching the woman and literally says, go sign up for a full day with me. That's $15,000. And the level of confidence that she had in herself and in her work and in her ability to deliver results was powerful. And she just knew it. And she looked at this woman and she said, go sign up for a full day. And the ladies were like, right now? And she's like, yeah, right now. And the woman got up off the stage and walked to the back of the room and paid her $15,000 right there on the spot. On the other end of the spectrum, talking to a woman who's also very well trained and has an education, has a lot of experience, but whose self-worth was just pretty low. Didn't have a whole lot of belief in herself and in her value, and her money situation reflected that. And it was just, and so these two again provide like a really powerful kind of two ends of the spectrum, and then I got to interact with people in the whole range, the whole palette of kind of senses, just like connection to self worth, basically. And I saw this theme come up over and over again, and I get that I could be making that up myself, but that probably has to do with me, and what's useful for me is really looking into my sense of self worth, and where does that how does that play into how much money I'm making and how I'm making it? How do I feel when I'm making it? So, thing number three was self worth equals money earned. Um, and then thing number four, I talked about a little bit also, but I'm going to frame it in a slightly different way. And that's the inquiry into why am I creating money? It's a good question. Why are you making money? What are you getting out of it? For some people, it was freedom. For some people, it was security. It meant different things. For other people, those were the two most common ones that came up in my conversations. And for me, it was security. But security on like an existential life or death level. And that's not a very useful place to come from if I'm trying to create from spirit and from heart and without neediness. The thing that's really interesting is that for all of the money that I have paid to coaches and just other people to support me along the way in helping to learn how to make money and growing as a coach, none of them ever stopped and said, Bob, why do you really want to make money? And none of them stopped and sat with me and really drilled deep down and figured out what was actually going on underneath all of the layers around why I wanted to create a business and why I wanted to make money. And I've realized that's that why, that core why. And again, for me, that's that terror that like, if I don't have money, I'm going to die. It's taken me my own process to come to uncover that. And that's been the very thing that it looks at this point, I guess time will tell. But it looks at this point like that's one of the very core things that has prevented me from making as much money as I want and experiencing as much flow and as much, just as much peace around money as I would like to. So why why am I creating this money? Why am I making it? And getting really honest about that. It's something that if I were able to go back and have others kind of guide me toward, I would. But that's a lesson that I learned myself along the way so far. So those were a few of the I guess like insights, conscious, rational insights that happened for me through these conversations. But truly, actually, the things that have been the most useful to me, useful is not even the best word, like the things that have meant the most to me and been the most important to me and been the most fulfilling and ultimately kind of brought me closer to the experience of life that I actually want, were the connections that I made with people. So one of the things that happened was I lost some shame around talking about money. Just having the conversation period, as well as certain places in my life where I hold shame around money. There's less of that now, which means that I get to have easier, deeper connections with everybody in the world. And I get to have more intimacy, more connection, more love. The thing number two is that I've been creating some group conversations around money with people. I have held one call, and the second one is on the calendar, of bringing a small group of people together to talk about money and privilege and shame in a group context, and sitting down for 90 minutes and having this really important conversation about the privileges that we've grown up with and that others haven't grown up with, and just having an awareness of who we are and how we got to where we're at, which I believe gives us the sensitivity to be able to connect with other people and meet them more where they're at, and ultimately to be able to heal the world and do a better job of healing the world and being effective in our work as healers. I mean, most of my community is healers. So that was the thing number two that was kind of really a true takeaway for me. And then the thing number three that was really a true fulfilling takeaway from me was I've created some really beautiful friendships. There have been not a ton necessarily, but a few people that I have met through these conversations that that I'm just really grateful to have in my life now. And even in this moment, my whole world hasn't necessarily changed for having them in it. And it might in the future. It might have changed in the future for that. But again, it's just deeper connections with people and people who I love and who light me up and who inspire me and who I'm really grateful to have in my life. If I had to choose money or deep connections with people, it's a no-brainer. And so these connections, these relationships, these spaces to be in connection, the ability to be in connection with people are the deeper takeaways that I've gotten from all of these money conversations. So that was a lot. And that's about, I guess one other thing that I'll share with you is, as I was having the conversations, I compiled a list of, how many is this? About 20 questions that are interesting and useful places to jump off from in doing one's own internal money exploration, or to sit down with somebody and open up a conversation with one other person or multiple other people around money, and just create more honest, real conversations around money. So if you are interested in those questions, I would love to share them with you. That's what I have to say about money for today. That has been a little bit of my journey around money over the past 3 months at this point, I guess. I love you. Thank you for listening. You're extraordinary. You're beautiful. I hope that you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, and I'll talk to you next time I do. Bye-bye.